to the Heartache Connoisseur Podcast, everybody. I hope you had a fabulous weekend. I did. We played more video games. We set a record for video games this weekend. We had some version of some system set up on every TV in the house, occupied all day, every day. Because it's so cold that there's nothing else to do. That's not true. Sunday warmed up a little bit, and we could have gone sledding, but we didn't. So that's the way the cookie crumbles. And this week on the Heartache Connoisseur, I am going to do a series on honesty. Honesty is, you'd think honesty was a simple concept to understand, but I think there's a lot of nuance to this. And so I'm going to share what I know. And certainly the honest truth is that I don't know everything, but I've had some experience helping people get to the truth about themselves, and I've had some experience helping people learn how to express that truth to others in a healthy way. And this first one is called Being Honest, a Lost Art. Now, there's a double meaning there. I was flipping through Netflix, and I found this documentary series, Raiders of a Lost Art. And I was watching the first episode, and it's all about this guy, Hildebrand Gurlitt. And this guy in the 1930s, was in Nazi Germany, helping round up all of the art that Hitler felt was degenerate. And so this guy had a background in art, and he was a major art dealer before the Nazis took power, and he was a quarter Jewish, and he was scared for his life, and so he sort of did whatever they told him, played both sides of the fence, and took a lot of the art for himself. The guy, through the course of basically extorting art from the citizens of Germany, paying pennies on the dollar for these masterpieces, amassed an art collection that was unsurpassed. I mean, he had 1,400 paintings, 1,406 to be exact, that were later confiscated. But this guy was going around and offering people, he's lowballing them on this art and collecting it. And he died in 1956 in a car crash, but he had bequeathed this art collection to his son Cornelius, who was living as a hermit in Munich with all 1,406 of these paintings in his apartment with him. And I guess he just, he flew under the radar till he was like 80 years old or something, and he finally ran out of money and went to sell one and made the sale successfully, but was stopped on the subway or the train, I guess, crossing a border with 9,000 euro, which is just shy of the limit that you're allowed to travel with. And so that made him suspicious, and they did some investigating, and one thing led to another, and they found these 1,400 paintings that were considered stolen, basically. And as we speak, this was in 2012, you may have heard of this, and as we speak, they're actually going through those paintings one at a time and trying to find the rightful owners and the families of these owners. And this collection is valued at over $1 billion with a B. Insane stuff. I mean, we're talking Picasso's, and I'm no art historian, but the biggest names around these paintings and drawings and such were just, one-of-a-kind masterpieces, many of them. A lost art. Because Hitler was only into the very most straightforward art. He liked, busts, statues, I mean. And, he also liked pictures of buildings, presumably the ones he wanted to build. And he had plans to put this major museum in place and fill it with the best art in the world. And so one of the things this guy Hildebrand Gurlitt was also doing was running around picking up art for Hitler to use in his his museum, but not the degenerate kind. And as far as I could tell, what Hitler didn't like was anything that suggested thinking for yourself, transcendent beauty, stuff like that. And he just really was into the straight and narrow. And a lot of paintings were destroyed. I mean, I don't know the estimates on that, but a lot of stuff didn't survive. And this guy basically ended up with some of these paintings because Hildebrand did, because he said they let him go. They were I guess the Americans were interviewing him after the war, and he claimed that all this art was destroyed in the bombings of Dresden, and they let him go free of charge. So anyway, being honest, what do I mean? Well, I'm going to start with this. I'm going to start with this analogy. We're going to kind of work with this metaphor for a while as needed. But I like to think of the human being as a conduit. There's a flow. You could also think of it as a vessel, a container where there's a pouring in and a pouring out. Conduit works pretty well for this metaphor because we're talking about a flow that occurs, that you are a being, in that every day you are allowing this thing called life to flow out of you. And you can do that honestly, or you can be dishonest and prevent the flow, which would be akin to denting this pipe. Imagine yourself with the ball peen hammer. There's a lie. Bing! And then another one. Dink, dink. And then pretty soon, this thing is dented and crimped, and it doesn't allow for flow. But it's metal, and it can be beat back into shape again. So what do I mean by I don't mean getting caught with your hand in the cookie jar exactly. I mean this sort of like walking through life, and everyone you meet, you're authentic. You are your honest self. You are saying what you mean. You're meaning what you say. You're not trying to impress anybody. You know who you are. You state your yes, you state your no, and you stick by it. And no matter what people think of you, you don't let that deter you from your truth. Now, is your truth the gospel truth? No. Your truth is a work in progress. Your truth is a draft. You're writing a draft. I've used this many times, but it's as if you're doing a paper or a novel about your life, and throughout the course of your life, you're going back and editing that novel. But we have a distinct unwillingness often to go back and take apart our own writings about ourselves and challenge what we believe about ourselves and make some changes. And that leads us into some problems, because we just keep on going with these dents in our tube, and we have to make new dents to cover for the old dents, and pretty soon the thing is so beaten up and misshapen that it's unrecognizable, and we're just stopping up, and this life is attempting to pass through us, and it cannot. And this is what else happens, is that pressure just builds and builds and builds. There's a constant inflow. And if it doesn't have anywhere to go, it just compresses in there. And that's what many of us feel like. We're walking around about to burst, wanting to broadcast who we really are and break out of the shell and become alive for real. Not just what we think alive is and what the messages of our society are about what alive is, but truly alive in a unique way. Now, you got to hang with me on a premise here for this to make any sense at all. And that premise is that there is an authentic, unique you, that you were created by the Master, and you have a call and a unique contribution to make to society. That is an important principle in my argument. And I have empathy for dishonesty, because dishonesty is a very effective strategy for certain things, like flying under the radar, not rocking the boat, not getting yourself identified as a troublemaker, being accepted in your group of friends or your family or your coworkers. Subtle lies. Sometimes we wear things we don't even like, don't we? Sometimes we order a drink when we're not in the mood. Sometimes we go out when we'd rather be with our children. Sometimes we do a lot of things that are not what we really want to do. And at its most basic form, that is dishonesty. Oftentimes we don't speak up. When we hear something that we know is offensive or derogatory, we keep it to ourselves. That is what's called a sin of omission, where we don't say our truth in the moment appropriately. And these things add up. And after a while, even you don't know the truth anymore. And it's a process of unraveling, like a big ball of Christmas lights. We just took our decorations down last night, and we got these lights coming off the tree, right? And I absolutely abhor untangling Christmas lights. I'd rather buy all new ones every single time than untangle a ball of Christmas lights. So I went out and bought some of those orange extension cord organizer reel things from like Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever. And I wind the Christmas lights up on these things every year so that when it comes time to put them on, I just unravel them like I would an extension cord. And, I could put several strings on these things. Now, there's a little bit of investment there. You got to buy the reels, but you can reuse them every year. The alternative is putting them in a Rubbermaid Tupperware and forgetting about them for 12 months and finding them on a day where you're attempting to enjoy your family with some nice music and some gingerbread cookies and some eggnog and some hot apple cider, and then going into a rage because you can't undo your Christmas lights and you're looking for your wire cutters and you're like, well, that's not going to work because then there'll be, you know what, I'm getting them anyway. And that's pretty much my strategy for, we do that. We when it comes time to sort of tell our truth, oftentimes we do that. We just go for the wire cutters. We go for the jugular instead of delivering up our truth with finesse. And that's what I mean by a lost art. That's this thing that honesty requires to be the most effective, and that is a delivery that is able to be handled by the receiver, that is kind, that is not derogatory, that does not shirk responsibility. And that takes practice. And that's why trusted friendships are important, because we have to practice this stuff around people that are safe. Because sometimes, honestly, when we tell our truth to somebody, it pisses them off. And sometimes it pisses them off because it's true. And sometimes it pisses them off because you got it wrong about them and they have a legitimate reason to be angry. But you're never going to get it worked out until you at least get that statement out there. This is the thing I've been sitting on. And, I see married couples. Like, I'm not even kidding. I was working with this couple a while back, and they're having some communication problems, shockingly. And as we begin to unravel their ball of Christmas lights, I find out that this guy is upset about the way that his wife talked to him 20 years ago still. He's got memories of her talking to him in a way that made him feel incompetent and stupid that he's held on to. And you know what his response was to that? Instead of saying, hey, honey, when you talk to me that way, I feel condescended to, and I'm wondering if we could discuss a better way to work things out. He just stopped communicating altogether. And this guy's now gone like 20 plus years without really saying what's on his mind, because he figures, why bother? I'm just going to get shot down. And that has brought this married couple to the very brink, and I don't know if their marriage is going to survive. I really don't. And so after a while, when that person does not receive you well, or you don't feel safe telling them your truth, you go find somebody that will. And this is the basis for a lot of these emotional affairs and such, is that people, they get to a place in their marriages where they feel stifled in their communication, and they just start striking something up with somebody at work or somebody on the internet or whatever, and that becomes oftentimes an inappropriate relationship, and can even turn into an affair or a sexual relationship too. So it's super important. I mean, this guy's pipe was clogged up and he was about to burst, and he didn't know how to begin to unravel it. And that's where marriage counseling often is helpful, is you get in there and you have somebody, a third party, help you learn how to be honest with each other. It's like you're an arbiter. I become what a negotiator for that married couple in some ways. I'm helping them hear each other's truth in a way that's safe. I'm making sure that they each get a chance to talk, that the other one is understanding the other before we move on to the next thing. And there are various ways we go about that. But a good portion of what marriage counseling is essentially getting the truth out there and beginning to unravel it, unwind it. And we do that at a certain rate, at a certain pace that's doable, that's not excessively painful for this married couple. I mean, there's a lot of things that I don't say in these sessions as I'm allowing people to kind of come to their own understanding of things, and that's sort of me dosing my truth appropriately, and that's kind of the art of it. Now I'm in a therapist role, but the same thing applies in our interpersonal relationships. But we don't dose very well. We come home and we say, you know what? What have you been doing all day? I've been working, and I see dishes in the sink, and I see laundry that's not folded, and the house isn't clean, and the groceries aren't. But what have you been doing all day? And then she says, you know what? You can go F yourself, because I've been rolling around in dirty diapers with these 3 children that you impregnated me with. And what have you been doing all day? You've been with grown-ups, having a relaxed lunch with time to use the bathroom. You haven't had to smell human feces. You haven't had to puree peas. None of this. And you come home and you have the gall to tell me that I'm not working hard. And just because I don't earn a paycheck taking care of your spawn doesn't mean I'm not working. Right? This is this argument that goes on. And we just blow up and we lay it all out. And that's a tame version of some of the stuff, and and then there's the ad hominem attacks. It's like, and by the way, your ass doesn't look good in those jeans. And by the way, you are growing man breasts, and we just start laying. And do we really think these things? Yeah. Is it appropriate to tell that truth at that moment in time? No, it's not. It's not helpful. It's destructive. That's going against this notion of it being an art. And that's why I'm saying it's a lost art. Our society has lost track of how to tell truth with skill. And you know what? If you're going to tell the truth to someone about them, you've got to be willing to tell them the truth about you too. Honey, sometimes when I come home from work, I feel really overwhelmed by all the work that's here in this house, and I feel tired from work, and I don't want to accuse you of not doing your job, because I know raising kids is hard. So sometimes I feel stuck. I don't know how to approach the fact that we have all this stuff we need to do to make this household go, and I've been working all day, and I don't always feel appreciated. I don't know how to approach this problem without getting mad and putting it in your face in a way that's damaging. Can you help me have this conversation in a way that gets us forward. Thanks, baby. I really appreciate when you talk to me like that. You know what? I also feel overwhelmed a good portion of the time, and I see that you work really hard for this family. I see that that's your way of loving us, is providing and contributing. I see that it was my decision to quit work and stay home with the kids, and it's not right for me to complain about that when I decided to do that, and we decided that was what we were going to do as a couple. And I know you feel unappreciated, and I don't always take the time to let you know how much I appreciate your role in our kids' lives as a father. You're a good father. You're a good husband, and that's what truth telling with skill looks like. You're saying, hey, this isn't all you. This is me. I feel overwhelmed. I feel afraid right now. I feel hurt. I feel scared. I'm afraid if I say what I really think, I'm going to lose you. That's what I mean. You know, that's often what this boils down to. I'm afraid that if I say the truth, I'm going to lose you as a partner, as a friend, as a family member. And frankly, sometimes we do. But what we do is we expose relationships for what they really are. If you're in a relationship with somebody that's a complete fraud, it's a complete sham, if you start telling the truth, you're going to expose that relationship for what it really is. And then the other person then has a decision to make. We can either call it quits, or I can come along beside you and start to tell my truth, and I can grow too. So truth has all these consequences, these downstream consequences that makes life better. Now, sometimes it gets worse before it gets better, but what do you want? Do you want an entire lifetime of your tube crimped and banged up under intense pressure, living a lie, living a partial sham all the time, only rarely telling the truth when your blood alcohol level gets to 0.8 or whatever it takes for you to finally open up? I mean, we need kindness and we need honesty in our relationships. And it's loving. And withholding the truth is not loving. But I empathize because people don't hear us well, and that can often leave us in the lurch. It's like Hitler, Hitler wanted to squelch art. He wanted to take anything that people made that was a true representation of themselves and their feelings, and he wanted to destroy it. That's evil. That's what an evil dictator does, is he takes anything that goes against his notion of the truth, which is master Aryan race, and he silences it by force. Now, do we do this in our households with our kids? Yeah, we do. If you don't do it exactly like I want to do it or think you should do it, then I'm going to make you suffer. I'm going to punish you. We do this. We do this passive aggressively. We do it overtly. We do it by withholding affection. We do it by excessive punishments on our kids when they're going through phases of self-exploration that are appropriate. We do it with our spouses by making passive-aggressive comments, going behind their back and doing punishing things in various ways, posting on social media, spending money, running our mouths, gossiping, all of that. So what do we need? We need these museums where everything is out there. We need these museums where these paintings that are critical of the Nazi regime are hanging right next to the classics that are a little bit more tame. And there's a time and a place for both. There's a time and a place for truth that is difficult, and there's a time to withhold that and wait. And that's another part of this art form is sometimes we need to wait until the right moment to tell the truth. And we need to set aside a period of time where maybe the kids aren't at home and we've got a few hours, and we sit down and we have a conversation, and we let it have all the time that we need to work through it the best that we can. That's part of this art form. We don't spring it on people when we're out to dinner in public and just start lambasting our partners in front of other people. That's not fair, and that's not helpful. It's damaging. But if you take a time at home and set it aside and say, hey, I got some stuff I really need to talk to you about. I really care about our relationship, and I'd like to see it as healthy as possible. Could you give me a couple hours on Saturday afternoon where we can just go over some things? Yeah, I can do that. And that's an appropriate way to do it. That's part of the art form. So that's my invitation to you. There's a book I read not long ago. It was called Radical Honesty by Brad Blanton. And I found that book to be particularly helpful. I thought it was a really, really well done piece on honesty and why we tell the truth and how we tell the truth and what the truth sounds like for real. And I think this is something that is so basic, and we often tell ourselves, I'm honest, I'm hardworking. I don't lie. George Washington cannot tell a lie. He chopped down the cherry tree. I mean, that sort of kind of fantasy we live in, that we're these squeaky clean people. We're not. We are holding on to things. We are fudging the truth. We are living falsely in front of certain people. We are not the same people in every situation we find ourselves. We're different people at work, at home, at school. And that's dishonest. And it's soul crushing. And you know what happens is when you start to tell the truth, a little bit of that pipe opens up. And then more truth happens. And more truth. And it gets a little bit more open every time you say your truth. And pretty soon, there's this gusher or deluge of life that's flowing through you all the time. And you become walking truth. And people begin to trust you. Even though they may not always like what you say, they trust you. Would you rather be liked or respected? And it begins to change your life. You find yourself getting promoted at work. You find yourself with a healthier relationship. You find yourself the person that your friend comes to when they have a real need for help. That's what happens when you become honest. You become trustworthy. And then you are given the opportunity by those around you to be who you were made to be, to follow your call. So that's my invitation. Start telling a little bit of truth. Don't do it all at once. Small bites. Puree your truth peas. Little baby spoons at first. Oh my gosh, look at this paint on my hand. I had a can of purple spray paint break open on the top. I dropped it and it was spraying everywhere. And anyway, that's a different story. But you know what? Thanks for listening to this podcast. And I really hope it's helpful. If you find this kind of thing helpful, help me out. Share it, comment. I appreciate feedback. It's been great. Some of y'all's comments on my last series were really touching. And it lets me know that I'm having some impact, no matter how small or large it might be in your life. And that's encouraging to me, and it makes me want to come down here and do this. So thank you for that. And tomorrow we're going to continue this discussion. And if you wouldn't mind, go to my website, scroll down to the bottom. There's a link to my Patreon page, and head over there and look about how you can support this podcast. And sometime this week, I'm actually going to lay out how that works and exactly what the details are. And I'm working out a reward system too. That's part of the fun of this. Is if it's kind of like old PBS, you make a donation and they send you a canvas handbag with a pelican on it or something that you don't really want. But I'm going to try to figure out how to give you guys some gifts or reflective of me, and hopefully things that might be a delight to you. But we'll talk more about that as time goes on. Hey, thanks for listening. Have a great day.